Greetings, greetings, greetings. You are now tuned into the vault. This is your host, Trust Christian, Own Nothing, Control Everything. Just wanted to do a post today to talk about something that it struck me when I was 18 years old. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 18 years old. I've been a financial researcher since I was 18 years old. First book I ever picked up on business and finance and actually read it from front to back was Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I wanted to do an episode today on sole proprietor versus S Corp, C Corp, and trust. And the reason why I want to do that is because when you become an entrepreneur, most business schools aren't going to tell you what specific entity to get in. A lot of entrepreneurs say, the business is the vehicle, but that means they're limited in their capacity and their knowledge base. They've been given a controlled knowledge base. They've been given a public education. And so I just want to thank you all for tuning in live or listening to replay, because this episode is really going to be catered towards someone as 18 years old like me. When I was 18 years old, starting out as a sole prop, moving into a trust capacity as a trustee, and understanding the perspective of own nothing, control everything. Like I say, the first financial book that I ever read was Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, where he talks about owning a business. He talks about having a big business owner. Thanks, Trey Stone, for tuning in live. He talks about big business owner, and he talks about the investor. And I really just wanted to talk about the sole proprietor, how it's the lowest position you can be in commerce. When I was coming up in business, before I really learned trusteeship, I really didn't know what business entities were best for business and things of that nature. And the average individual that owned a business couldn't tell me, because they were filling out 1040s for their tax forms. They said they had corporations, but they weren't filling out the 1120s. Could barely even tell me what an 1120 was for taxes. They couldn't tell me what the S Corp tax form was. They just pretty much said that, hey, I own a business. And I think, that's the danger of being in business today, is still having a public education and not understanding or knowing what a public education really entails and what that knowledge base entails. But for the most part, it entails ownership. It entails full liability. And so understanding what a sole proprietor versus an S Corp and a C Corp and a trust, you really understand the difference between separating your business wealth from your personal wealth. Sole proprietor literally means it's all on you, clearly. Social security and number and everything else. Whereas the S Corp and the C Corp and even a trust, they put it in a position of limited liability, possibly lack of ownership. Traditionally, S Corps, they're going to be holding corps. That's pretty much a corp that it's a public entity. Once again, so you get into the public entities such as a S Corp, C Corp, where you have to go to the Secretary of State and apply for the entity to be set up and regulated by some form of legislation. Whereas trust, they have two types of trust on an initial onset, which is a public trust and a private trust. Public trusts, once again, are going to be statutory trusts that you go to a public lawyer, they're going to set up for you. Sometimes they're going to be living trusts, sometimes they're going to be revocable trusts. Whereas private trusts are set up via Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution. So that's where you get in the EIN number, EIN 98 number, where you get into a private, possibly a foreign entity. And so that's critical when you're doing businesses, to understand the different business vehicles that the business that you're conducting is able to maneuver in. And the reason why I say that these are the business vehicles, whether it's the sole proprietor, whether it's the S Corp, C Corp, or trust, is because those are the entities that have numbers. The particular business that you're doing doesn't have a number. It could be a trust can hold any type of business. A S Corp can hold any type of business. A C Corp can hold any type of business. A sole prop can hold any type of business. So when people tell you that the business is the vehicle, I want you to ask them, well, what specific business are you talking about? Are you talking about an S Corp? Are you talking about a C Corp? Are you talking about a trust? Are you talking about holding it in a sole proprietorship status? Why? Because that's the vehicle that's going to determine the tax liability. That's the entity that's going to determine the fringe benefits. Everybody wants to talk about going into business for yourself, but where are you going to get the most amount of fringe benefits? Isn't that something that's important as an entrepreneur? What entity is going to minimize your tax liability? Isn't that something that is important to you as an entrepreneur? What entity is going to give you the greatest level of asset protection? Meaning that you have arm's length distance, that you don't own it, but you still control it. You're able to grow the wealth separately from yourself. You don't pull down profits, because if you pull down profits or you receive anything in a beneficiary status, then you're actually going to receive some type of tax liability. Where are the entrepreneurs that can explain that, if they're entrepreneurs, if they're business men and women? And this is something you're supposed to know as an entrepreneur. You know, big fan of Donald Trump's, and he talked about, in some of his books, he talks about understanding this, being in the right business vehicle. You have to be in the correct business vehicle. He says he knows the tax law better than anybody. That's interesting that he even passed reform, because he doesn't even adhere to those laws. He's private. He has all of his stuff set up in trust and charity. But then they're passing laws in Congress right now for a sole proprietor, for a S Corp, C Corp. Nah, that's for public people. He doesn't even adhere to those laws. And most Congress people don't. Most senators don't. So as a sole proprietor, you understand that you don't have any type of protection. It's all liability on you. As an S Corp, there's some type of arm's length distance, but it's still looked at as a pass-through. Then you got your C Corp. C Corps, you know, I've seen C Corps operate. Yeah, you might not say that you own it. You could just pull down stuff as a board member, fringe benefit. You might even pull stuff down as a shareholder. But I ask you all, if that's the case, why is it when you go to the IRS and you search in business structures, because these are the structures. In order for you to build wealth, you have to have the correct structure in place. It's like the foundation to a house. If you have a 10,000 square foot structure to the house, then you can build 10,000 square feet of housing on it. If you have a 400 square foot structure in place, then you have to build a 400 square foot structure. Do you understand that's a crimp in the hourglass to you building wealth? Is the structures that you have in place. So you go to the IRS website and you go to the business structures. You have to go to the IRS website. You search in business structures. Let's do that together. Ladies and gentlemen, IRS.gov. Always an easy website. Business structures. Business structures. So let's go to business structures. Very important. Okay? It says when beginning a business, you must decide the form of business entity to establish. So why is it when you're talking to other entrepreneurs, they never tell you what business entity they've established? Does that matter? Let's look what the IRS says from their website. Your form of business determines which income tax return form you have to file. Did you know that all businesses or entities are not created equal? But who's explaining that to you? The lawyer that you're supposed to hire? The most common forms of businesses are sole proprietorships, partnerships, corporations, and S Corps. Those sound like public entities. A limited liability company is a business structure allowed by state statute. All of those entities are allowed by state statute. A sole prop, a partnership, a corporation, an S Corp. Even a limited liability. These are statutory. That means the statutory regulations can change at any moment. Now, why is it that you would need to know what type of business structure to go in? It says, this is from the IRS website, and I quote, legal, 1, and tax, 2, taxes, considerations enter into selecting a business structure. So the business entrepreneurs that you're talking to, go start a business in 2018. It's going to be great because the tax laws are written for the businesses. You can't no longer be an employee. Well, what's the best entity to go in? And let's look at what the IRS website says. Sole proprietorships, partnerships, corporations, S Corps, and limited liability companies. Where does it talk about a trust on there? A trust is a contract. A partnership's a contract. Remember, a partnership is between two entities or people. They create a partnership. That's a contract. A corporation is a contract. An S Corp is a contract that holds other contracts. A limited liability company, it's a contract, once again, that holds other contracts. We're always dealing in contracts, implied or expressed. We don't even see anything about a trust on here. Why is that? Because it talks about common forms. This is interesting. This is what is called a public education, not a private education. Thank you, MV. These are called informed and uninformed families. Uninformed families, that's what you get fed. The IRS not going to tell you that you can set up a trust, a private trust document. They're not going to tell you that. Did they tell you that? No, they didn't. They just told you what the business structures are. They told you what the common form of business structures are. Why didn't they talk to you about the private ones? Because they have no jurisdiction over the private ones. They can't tax the private ones unless the private ones come into the public and create a minimum contact, which is a tax liability. That's why. 9-8 numbers. Trust. So, I just wanted to put you all abreast of something that literally is sitting in front of your face every single day. And there's nothing you can do about it unless you enroll in private trustee training. You have to learn how to own nothing, control everything, because all of those entities put full liability on you. Let's go back to them. The sole proprietor, we already know that's a social security number. Partnership, you're not going to get around a partnership. Still paying taxes. All you did was go into business and have a name. It's like a doctor's office, how they have multiple doctors inside of an office, and all of them are under the same name. Instead of them one person practicing, they have actually a medical insurance as group insurance for all the doctors working in the same office. Corporations, big corporations, we already know what they're doing. They're passing on their tax liability to their shareholders. That's what they're doing. Whether you all know it or not, a corporation, a C Corp in the public, is to set up for the original founders to pass on their tax liability to their shareholders. Why? Because shareholders receive dividends, income, and profit. The corp is a corp. It has shareholders. S Corp, pass-through entity. We already know how that goes. It just depends on what entity is owning it. Once again, it's all about ownership. Then you have limited liability company, a fairly modern and new entity. A lot of individuals still don't know a lot about these entities. It's called a limited liability company because you're trying to put a face in front of your sole prop or something like that. But at the end of the day, why is it that most individuals don't still fill out and get it classified as a corporation? They're still getting it, still having it looked at as just an entity. Just some random entity. It's not a random entity. They call it a limited liability company, but I know individuals that have their LLCs classified as a limited liability corporation. When you look. So when you click on limited liability and business structures, let's go ahead and see what this says. Because this is what happens when you do your own research for yourself. Not let some person sit on the internet just telling you, go get an LLC. Or letting some lawyer that you're supposed to hire tell you get an LLC. Classifications. Depending on the election made by the LLC, the number of members, the IRS will treat an LLC as either a corporation partnership or as a part of the LLC owner's tax return, a disregarded entity. Wow. So an LLC can be a corporation? For all the lawyers that I ever talked to, that they might have responded to my page and said LLC is not a corporation? Well, I'm looking directly at the IRS website, and it actually says that an LLC can be elected and classified as a corporation. Oh, so an LLC can have shareholders. Oh, an LLC can be looked at as a partnership. That's why that entity is powerful. That's why you see a lot of entities or a lot of people trying to go into the LLC, but the average entrepreneur, keyword average, can't tell you why is it that they're in an LLC. Leo Spell, thanks for joining. Moneymaker, thanks for joining. So I'm going to talk to Leo real quick, and all you all can listen. Because, Leo, I like the relationship that Leo has responded to the vault. He's been tuned into the vault for a long time. I always appreciate that relationship. So Leo responded this past week and said, I was talking to some network marketers, and they told me that I probably shouldn't listen to people that are on the internet maybe saying things like you're saying. So I challenge you, Leo, to go to these individuals and ask them, what are they doing their business in? A S Corp, C Corp, LLC, Trust. Why? Because when we go to the IRS website, because they say they're making money, business structures dictate the legal and tax considerations. You're an entrepreneur. You're supposed to think for yourself. So that means that you would know the tax considerations. Why would you put yourself in an entity that has the highest tax liability? But most of them are operating network marketers as sole proprietorships. Most of them think they're going to get around it by going up and opening up a C Corp or S Corp or an LLC. But did they go and do the dirty work? Here's the dirty work for you, Leo. The dirty work is, let's click on limited liability partnership. And let's see that you can actually get it classified. And you can get it classified as a corporation or a partnership. Or if you don't get it classified, it's going to be looked at as a disregarded entity. It's called the alter ego. And guess what tax form you're supposed to fill out to get it classified? It says, we're going to continue reading, specifically a domestic LLC, because most of these individuals don't know how to do business internationally, tax-free. A domestic LLC with at least 2 members is classified as a partnership. Oh wow, did you know you can go in business with your best friend and you can avoid personal income taxes and have the entity classified as a partnership for federal income tax purposes unless it files 8832 and affirmatively elects to be treated as a corporation? Once again, ladies and gentlemen, this is on the IRS website. This is not Trust Christians and the Vault information. This is IRS information. This is the same entity that you are reporting the entities that you're using to every year. I'll read it again. Specifically, a domestic LLC with at least 2 members is classified as a partnership for federal income tax purposes, unless it files 8832, Form 8832, and affirmatively elects to be treated as a corporation. An LLC with only 1 member is treated as a disregarded entity as separate from its owner for income tax purposes, but as a separate entity for purposes of employment tax and certain excise taxes. And then there's a comma, because you got to keep reading, unless it files Form 8832 and affirmatively elects to be treated as a corporation. So it actually can still have 1 member and still be affirmatively elects to be treated as a corporation. This is, once again, ladies and gentlemen, you can go to Business Structures on the IRS website, click on Limited Liability Company, and then actually read. As an entrepreneur, that's your job, to read and have it elected as a corporation. Now, why do you want to do that? Because there's a publication that will have the entity classified as a what is that? A corporation, which means now the entity can receive corporate fringe benefits. This isn't Trust Christian quoting legal advice. This is reading common information off of common business structures off of the IRS website, which the entity is going to be reporting to anyways. Interesting. The average individual couldn't even explain it to you. I waited almost six years to hear that information as an entrepreneur, till my mid-20s, to do that little bit of research, to find out what's the best entity for me to go in as an entrepreneur. How do I use this entity to go out and find the best lawyer and find the best CPA? I share with you all, you need to go find an enrolled agent. Sometimes they can be tax attorneys, sometimes they can be CPAs. You need to go find an enrolled agent that actually knows what I just talked to you about. That's what we do at the Vault. We don't need to give legal advice. You need to go find competent legal advice. So, you have the trust, that's private. Probably not going to find a private individual in the public really talking about trust because they're secrets. If you look up the definition in the law dictionary, it's a secret. So, you got your common business structures. Then you have your private ones. Social Security number versus EIN 98 number. Thank you, Mama Lady TT. Thank you for tuning in live. You can get hold of me at Christian@trustchristian.com, and I'll write that in the chat here. Once again, that's Christian at trustchristian.com. We do consultations. And we have private trustee training at the vault and private trustee training. That's what we're focused on. We're focused on making sure that we understand that. Leo says, I'm thinking about using network marketing to generate funds for my trustee training, but I know now for a fact that they have no private education at all. All you got to do is ask them. Do they have public entities or do they have private entities? It's really simple. Public entities or private entities, ladies and gentlemen. That's it. What are they operating out of? Why can't they tell you this is how you find out if they're public or private. All you gotta do is ask them, what tax forms are you filling out? Public or private tax forms. You don't need to ask them public or private. You ask them what tax form. They should tell you the number, and then you'll know. There you go. Most individuals walk around, 99% of individuals walking around, even lawyers, 1040s. There you go, public, 1040s. So, you got to understand the difference between these entities, sole proprietor versus S Corp, C Corp, and trust. Why? So you can know what's the legal and the tax ramifications of it. And you have to be able to talk to the lawyer, talk to the CPA in the proper capacity, and not be at their beck and whim of their limited knowledge as a professional. The only tax forms they filled out as a professional. We don't know everything. That's why you have trustee training. It's a continuing education program. You never stop. And you had a typo there, Mama Lady T. You said, so can I, when I file my taxes this year? Well, I mean, when you say you file your taxes, you said my, so that means you. And I don't know if you're filing them as an entity or as a person, because at the vault we talk about own nothing, control everything. So is it an entity filing taxes or is it a person filing? And guess what? A person is a trust. A person is a corporation. A person is an S Corp. A person is a sole proprietor. You can look that up in a legal definition dictionary too. So it just depends on what entity is filing them. And the entity that would be filing a fiduciary tax form will be a 1040. If you're not filling out a 1040 with the trust or an estate, it's going to be public. Everything's going to be subject to public examination and public review, be it 1040 or 1120. Those are all public tax forms. So the 1041 is a fiduciary tax form. That means you're acting in a position of trusteeship, which means you're private. You don't have any income to report to trust reports. You need training before the end of this year, where you, once again, you have the email, Christian at trustchristian.com. We can start out with a consultation and go forward from there. You got 9 days. We're pushing hard towards the end of the year. We're doing an episode every single day. I'll be doing one on the ho Merry Christmas Day. I will definitely be on doing something to provide content for you all, because in 2018 going to be making some major changes and moving forward in a different capacity and a more advanced capacity, and I do my best to leave the content out there now for you all. We've been growing the vault here for about 2 years now in the public, and it's been really successful, and it's just time to continuously let other trustees benefit, and other trustees. You can see the power that the team and that we've been able to assemble in private trustee training, the private community that we've been able to assemble, and there's power in that, because we are humanitarians. Individuals say, it's just different things that people say, but I just want to end on this because I saw a post from somebody that I know of on Facebook, and this individual said you're paying the IRS when you deal with taxes. You're not paying the IRS, ladies and gentlemen. When you even get your tax refund, the IRS does not cut a check. It's called the Treasury. First of all, the IRS is an accounting agency. You should learn GAAP. It's called Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that is, the accounting principles are predicated off what entity you're using. But we have individuals that purport that they are entrepreneurs, and they don't know that. But they went to business school. They have MBAs. They swear they have multi-million-dollar businesses, but they don't know or don't want to tell you that there's different type of accounting principles applied based off of the entity that you're in. Why didn't they tell you that? The IRS is an accounting agency for Federal Reserve notes, for dollar bills. That's it. That's it. They're not a collection agency. They're not. They're an accounting agency. You have to know what entities you're dealing with. This is the ignorance that's permeated in the public by these individuals that don't know the proper capacity for the entities that they're dealing with. That's why you see CPAs. They're called certified public accountants. Why would they have the legal capacity to deal with the IRS if they weren't accountants? Because it's an accounting agency. They understand the accounting principles that the IRS is supposed to be administering with Federal Reserve notes. This is the knowledge that you're supposed to know. This is what you need to have for you and your children in private trustee training. It's for families to get into proper capacity, because family law is private law, contract law is private law. A sole prop, a S Corp, a C Corp, and a trust are all contracts. You're supposed to be able to administer your life from the proper contractual perspective. That's private. You're not going to learn that in the public, from public school or even a public college. And I can assure you, even if you try to subvert it with a private college education, and when you come into private trustee training, you learn how private, for all education is controlled by private contracts called endowments. Facts. Thank you all for letting me share. Appreciate you all. Thanks, Bomo, for tuning in. Always appreciate you, man, coming in live, tuning in live. Feel free to share this with your friends and family to help them get a better understanding. Go to the business structures. Why don't you see anything about private entities or private contracts? Because they don't have an obligation to tell you. You're public. Remember, it's called a certified public accountant. The IRS does accounting for public funds, not private. Thank you for tuning in live. Feel free to email us at Christian@TrustChristian. Serious inquiries for a consultation or trustee training. Look forward to hearing from you. Peace. Have a great day. Good night wherever you are.